How to open a Georgian bank account in TBC. Let's not waste any time. These are the 15 things you're going to learn in this video. The one big reason I decided to open a Georgian bank account, which banks you should choose and which banks to avoid, the 3 accounts that I opened and the one that I'd open again, the 6 things you need to open your accounts, why I opened the exact account the bankers told me not to, a sneaky hack for maximizing your airport lounge access, the solo benefit that I think is mostly useless, the one thing you absolutely must do during the application process, the transfer limits that trigger scrutiny on large money transfers, why I give both banks that I opened accounts with terrible customer service scores, my trick for expediting every customer service request, the little known way to connect your accounts with a foreign crypto exchange, the Georgian crypto exchange you need to avoid, how many days you need to open your accounts, and the 3 things that I would do differently. So let me tell you what I did. I visited TBC in December 2023. I opened 3 different bank accounts. I'm going to tell you about all of them in this video. And I was there from the time my plane landed to the time I took off was less than 72 hours. So you can do this very quickly. And I'll talk about timing a little bit later on. But I guess as a broad note, what you're not going to find in this video is me pitching a service that says, this is how you open your account abroad, talk to my team of lawyers or something like that. You've probably already come across that if you've done any research into this. You're not going to find that here. This is just my personal experience because when I was going through the process, it took me a lot of research and I wasn't really finding any reliable answers. So I'm just trying to make the video that I wish I could have seen before I went and did this myself. So I want to save you 95% of the research time and we'll see if I'm able to do that. Why did I open a Georgian bank account in the first place? In my case, it was because neobanks are unreliable. I have had friends and then I had myself an experience where a neobank, one of these online banks that I'd been working with for many years, they actually froze my account without any reason and without any notice. So this really spooked me because I just realized how fragile my banking setup was and how fragile a lot of our banking setups are, right? This is a well-known, reputable neobank, but they just said all of a sudden, okay, you can't move money in or out, you can't transact at all. And so I thought, okay, I need a better backup plan here. So I flew to Georgia to set these accounts up. The pros and cons of Georgian bank accounts. The pros are that you will find English banking apps and they do have very good English-speaking employees. They also are connected to the SWIFT network, so if you're sending money to the US or elsewhere in the world, they're pretty well connected there. Now, the cons are that you will run into high transfer fees, specifically on foreign currency transfers, and I'll talk about that later. You will run into questions after you open the account. Specifically, they'll be looking for proof of income if you make any larger transfers. So it's interesting because it is very easy to open the accounts. There's almost no questions asked. But later on, when you start making transfers, they will ask for more documentation. And so that's something to be aware of. And then there's also unpredictable customer service. So I'm going to talk about customer service later on, but this is something that has really irked me and frustrated me through the process of having these accounts. So these are the things that you need to open your account. You're going to need your passport. You will need your regular phone number, the one that you use all the time. You'll need a local phone number, and I recommend getting a SIM card with either MagT or Selfie. These are 2 mobile phone providers in Georgia. You can get a SIM card at the airport, or you can also get one much cheaper if you just go to one of their shops in town. They have shops all over the place. You're going to need around 3 business days. You're going to need a reason for opening the account. So I would suggest if you're moving larger amounts of money into these accounts, then I would suggest saying that you are considering buying real estate in Georgia. That's obviously a reasonable reason to move larger amounts of money into an account. But just be prepared that they will ask you why you're opening these accounts. If you're just doing it for, to have a backup plan or for daily transactions, then that's fine. You can just say that as well. And then finally, what you do. So they will ask you about your career. Something that's nice to have is a local address. I believe one of the three places where I opened accounts, they did ask me for a local address. So a hotel or Airbnb is fine. They don't actually send anything there, but it's just kind of a something they put in their paperwork. And what you don't need is proof of income or anything like that. But like I said, you will need that later on if you make larger transfers. So which banks should you open accounts with? I would say you should open with two. Those are TBC and Bank of Georgia, specifically Solo inside of Bank of Georgia. If you've done any research, you've probably already seen these names, so you're familiar with them. It's worth mentioning that both may offer lower prices or slightly different account types for Georgian residents, but I'm making this video from the perspective of someone who does not live in Georgia. So if that's you, then everything in this video is going to be relevant to you. Some other options that are out there are Credo, Liberty, and Terra. Those are some traditional banks. I just didn't find, they weren't necessary because TBC and Bank of Georgia are definitely the two big players. But then there's also Space, which is a neobank. I wasn't interested in working with a neobank, and they also, as far as I can tell, they don't operate in English. Everything is in Georgian, so that's something to be aware of as well. So let me walk you through the 3 accounts that I specifically opened. The first one is Bank of Georgia, Set S. And so just to be clear, Bank of Georgia, there's Bank of Georgia, which is, a very large entity, but then there's also Solo. And Solo is basically it's like a subsidiary of Bank of Georgia or a brand underneath it, right? So it is the same company, owned and operated by the same company, but Solo is slightly different. And so the Bank of Georgia, this account is just a very basic account. You can see they've got 3 account types here: small, medium, large. I opened the small account. It's 5 Lari a month, which is around $2 a month. And that's that, right? Not much else to say about this. This one I'm not really going to talk much about because it's a very basic account with not many features or anything. But the second account that I opened is Solo X. Okay, so like I said, Solo is its own brand underneath the larger Bank of Georgia brand. And there's 3 different tiers of Solo banking, X, Premium, and Club. And I opened a Solo X account. The reason that I opened the X, one of the big reasons is that they told me, I sat down with a Solo banker at one of the Solo branches there, and they told me that it's very easy to upgrade your account online, but it's hard to downgrade your account online. And this really stood out to me because I'm not planning to spend a ton of time in Georgia. I don't live there at the current time. So if I wanted to upgrade my account or just change my account in any way, I didn't want to get stuck paying 80 Lari a month for the Solo Club card and not be able to downgrade it and have to go to Georgia or do something like that. So I thought, okay, it's safer for me to get the X account and then I can upgrade if I need to. I haven't done that since. It's been about 6 months and I'm totally fine with the X account. They also told me that you can open a Solo account from abroad, but it's much easier to open it in Georgia. So they said that there's more documentation that you need to submit if you're going to open the account from abroad. And I'm not an expert on this because I didn't open the account remotely, but if you have come across these, people who are talking about remote bank account opening services, then generally, always, you need someone who has your power of attorney. So you have to give them your power of attorney, someone in Georgia, so that they can sign papers on your behalf. I'm assuming that you would need to do that if you're opening a Solo account, but I can't say 100% sure because I haven't done it myself. Now, the interesting thing is that the banker that I sat with actually discouraged me from opening a Solo X account. They kind of waved it off as something unimportant almost and really focused on the premium or the club. That might be just them, being sales reps, but it didn't feel salesy or sleazy at any time. I was a little bit confused actually afterward why they were so dismissive of the Solo X account because in my view, it's actually the best of the 3. It offers the best value for money. So let's look at a couple of the main features here. All 3 of the Solo tiers offer airport lounge access, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. The higher tiers, Premium and Club, you get access to a personal banker, and Solo X does not. So a personal banker is basically, you can think of it more or less as a customer service rep who you can call or email at any time, right? So you talk directly to them. They know your account. It's basically their job to take care of you. And I didn't need that, but that is something that you would get with premium or club. Also, the higher tiers get solo lounge access and Solo X does not. So solo lounges are different from airport lounges, okay? And this is something that they talk about a lot in their marketing for solo, but I actually think that this is not really a good benefit at all, right? They have a handful of these solo lounges around Tbilisi. Maybe they have them in other cities, I'm not totally sure, but they don't have any international, right? It's just within Georgia. But the lounges are nothing special at all, to be frank. There's so many beautiful cafes and restaurants all over Tbilisi that stepping into one of these solo lounges is nothing impressive. I would say it feels like the lobby of a 3 to 4 star hotel. So it's not really beautiful. It's not that inviting. It's not a co-working space, to be clear. There's not desks where you can work and things like that. It's not designed for that. It's really just some couches where you can sit, you can have some bottled water, and that's about it. So I don't really think that the solo lounges are what they're cracked up to be. And especially if you live outside of Georgia, then this is basically worthless to you, right? And even if you are there, I don't think it's a very good benefit either. Now, the third account that I open is TBC Concept. But first, I'm going to mention just quickly, at the top here, you see I've got the 3 plans. This is for TBC Bank, not for TBC Concept. So they have 3 different plans. I actually opened first the plan 10 because I wanted to have a regular TBC account, but also a TBC Concept account. Now, what I realized after I opened the plan 10, then I said to them, okay, now I want to open a Concept account. And so I went upstairs in the same branch and I said, okay, I have a plan 10 account. Can I open a Concept account? And they said, you can open a Concept account, but you can't keep the plan 10. You have to cancel that. So it was kind of a miscommunication, but what I learned is that you can't have a regular TBC account and a TBC Concept account. It's either one or the other. Whereas with Bank of Georgia, I do have a Bank of Georgia account, the small, and I also have a solo account. So that's fine, but with TBC, you can't do that. Now, I opened a TBC Concept 50 account. They also have Concept 75, but the 75 requires more documentation and you need to have Concept 50 first. Also, you can't upgrade to Concept 75 online. So now that I'm not in Georgia, I won't be able to do that anyway. You can see what they have here. This is from, a screenshot from their website. The premium is the Concept 50 account. 360 is the Concept 75. And then the digital is just the premium account, but just for Georgian residents. And so if you don't live in Georgia, this one is off limits to you. You can just get the premium or the 360. And of course, they're named after the prices, right? So 50 Lari a month is about $18, and that's the one that I have. 75 is about $28. You can't open accounts remotely at all with TBC. That's something that I also learned through this process. So with Solo, you can, but with TBC, they just do not open accounts remotely. So if you're thinking about opening an account remotely, then these are off limits to you. Now, some features of TBC Concept, they also get airport lounge access. I'll talk about that in a minute. You do get a personal banker with the Concept 50 and with Concept 75. So I have a personal banker who I can talk to at any time. I have their WhatsApp number. I can call them there. I can message them there. I can email them directly. And generally, they get back to you pretty quickly. So that is a nice little touch. It's not something necessary, especially if you're not making many unique transactions or anything. But maybe it'll come in handy down the road. And then one thing that I do like about TBC Concept is you get 2 visits a month to their co-working space, which is actually in their headquarters in Tbilisi. It's very central. And this is a beautiful space, right? It's much better than the solo lounges. There's only one of them, unfortunately, but it's a beautiful co-working space in a beautiful building. And it's definitely the kind of place where I would spend time. So if you're going to be in and out of Tbilisi, you don't actually live there, but you're there a little bit, then this is a great space to have access to. I spent a couple of hours there while I was on this trip opening these accounts, and I really did like the space. So I have nothing but good things to say about that. So the summary of which accounts I got, the Bank of Georgia, the small account, the Solo X, and TBC Concept. Now, what do I actually recommend if you're going through the same process? I would just say Solo X. The reason that I opened multiple accounts and tried to open a TBC regular account too, right? So I tried to open 4 accounts. The reason was just I wanted to know what actually worked, because I kind of understood as I was going through the process of opening these accounts that, some things are not exactly as they seem. So I just wanted to get all the accounts, see what actually works, see where I can use the card, right? Make transfers if I need to, just try it all myself, and then I can cancel accounts after. In retrospect, I think the Solo X account would be enough. It's just $8 a month, and I wouldn't have the additional drag of, it's like $2 a month for the Bank of Georgia account and $18 for TBC Concept. I think Solo X would be enough for me. So let's talk about travel benefits. First, airport lounges. So you get access to lounge key with your cards. Now, interestingly, with these Georgian bank accounts, what I'm accustomed to is when you open a bank account, you get one card, right? But in Georgia, it's different. So you get a MasterCard and a Visa with both of these accounts. And I also got an additional MasterCard with my Bank of Georgia account. I think I could have even got an additional Visa card with the Bank of Georgia account. There's just many different cards. You can get an American Express card at least with Solo. So there's just many different cards, and that's why things get a little confusing, right? In terms of travel benefits, the Visa cards are not helpful. As you can see here, the TBC Concept MasterCard gives you 3 visits to airport lounges per year, and the Solo X MasterCard gives you access to 2. Now, you will have to sign up. You have to link these cards to your lounge key account, and this was a little confusing. What I had to do was actually create 4 different accounts, each one linked to 4 different cards. Each one linked to 1 different card. It turns out that the Visa cards aren't helpful at all, so I only needed to really link the 2 MasterCards. But yeah, that's what I had to do. Now, here's something interesting, right? TBC Concept, in their marketing, there's a PDF that they have that explains all the features and benefits of TBC Concept. It says in that PDF that you get unlimited lounge access, but you actually don't. And this is one of the things that I really pressed their employees on to try and understand, because they weren't super clear on things like this. They knew the basics of the account, but they didn't know features like this very well. And so when I would ask them, how much airport lounge access do I get? They would kind of just look at me sideways a little bit and not really have much to say. So here's what you actually get, right? When I signed up, I did get unlimited lounge access, and so it's possible that you might too, but I signed up in December 2023, and around February or March, my account switched, and it went from unlimited to 3 per year. And I guess that's what I get moving forward at this point. So I would bank on having 3 per year, but you might have unlimited for a short amount of time in the beginning. It's still not entirely clear. With Solo, I didn't even link my Solo card to Lounge Key until around February or March of this year because I didn't need to, but that card gets 2 lounge visits per year. Now, one thing you'll see in the Solo marketing is they mention Priority Pass, which is a large network of lounges, right? Airport lounges. Now, I would say you should ignore this entirely because what I learned is that you have to pay per entry. So you have, Priority Pass basically has its own tiers. And I don't want to get things, go too deep in the weeds here, but Priority Pass has its own tiers. And with Solo, with the higher levels of Solo, you get access just to the lowest tier of Priority Pass. So you still have to pay something like $32 per lounge visit. So really, I don't think that having the ability to pay $32 to enter a lounge, that's not really a benefit to me. So that's why I say that you should ignore Priority Pass entirely and just focus on the lounge key, which come from the MasterCards. Now, here's something really interesting, right? Also in the tiered, the tiered descriptions of the Solo accounts, you can get additional MasterCards. You can pay for them. They're 60 Lari per year. And that allows you to claim an extra 2 lounge passes per year, right? Because each MasterCard gets 2 lounge passes per year. So if you're a heavy traveler, what you could potentially do is get a SoloX account that gives you 2 lounge visits per year, and then just get additional MasterCards for as many lounge visits as you need. They're $22 a year, so each lounge visit is $11. And I haven't tried this myself, that's why I say it's untested, but it seems like you could potentially just get 2, 3, 4, 5 additional cards, and you're basically just buying lounge passes with that. So instead of paying $32 per lounge, you're paying $11, which is a lot better, right? This could be something interesting. If you try this and it works, then definitely leave a comment. I want to know. The other big travel benefit is Fast Track. So Fast Track just allows you to breeze through immigration lines at airports. It can work when you're departing an airport or when you're arriving. So it can actually be a huge time saver. In my experience, sometimes you can save an hour or more just by using this Fast Track. So again, with the TBC Concept card, you get 3 per year. And with SoloX, you get 2 per year. This was also unlimited with TBC Concept when I signed up, but now it's been demoted to 3 per year, just as an FYI. So now let's talk about how to actually open your accounts. And this is actually very easy. Once you've done all the research and figured out which accounts you want to get and know the things you need to bring and all that, opening the accounts is actually very simple. First thing is you just want to find some convenient branches to you. So wherever you're staying, just find some branches that are close and go there. You can open an account basically at any branch, probably at all of them, I'm sure. So it doesn't matter which branches, but you don't want to go to the TBC Bank head office because they don't open accounts there. So that's where you'll find a co-working space, but you can't open an account there. So just go to a different TBC. Now, TBC and TBC Concept, you open in the same branches, just at the regular TBC branches. But for Bank of Georgia and Solo, Bank of Georgia, you just go to a Bank of Georgia branch, but Solo has its own branches. They're in different buildings. You'll recognize the branding once you start seeing it around the city. But it's just good to know that those are in different buildings, different offices, even though those companies are linked. I would say you should budget for 1 hour per account. Normally it's going to be faster than that, but you might have to wait a little bit depending on how busy it is. And here's the thing that you absolutely must do. You have to double check everything. Do not let them make any mistakes in your application because they might. In my case, they did. I'll tell a story about what happened with my phone number in a minute, but the takeaway for me was that I just need to be super particular about making sure that they have the correct information in the correct order and in the correct places, because otherwise it creates a lot of headache. After that, you just need to pick up your cards the next day. So both banks will tell you that your cards will be ready the next day, which is pretty impressive, right? These are custom cards with your name on them, and they will be ready the next day after 3 o'clock. So they'll ask you which branch you want to pick your card up at. You can choose the same branch or you can choose a different one. That doesn't matter. And then after 3 p.m. the next day, you just go there and your cards will be ready. It's very simple like that. But also, it's worth double checking everything at that point, because this can only take 5 or 10 minutes to pick up the cards. But what I learned when I picked up my card this was with Solo and Bank of Georgia, there was a problem. There was a miscommunication where they thought I wanted to have the accounts merged, but I actually wanted them to be separate. And so what they did was they gave me the wrong cards, and I had to stay. I had to pick them up again a day later, which could have caused a bunch of problems for me. It almost did. I almost missed my flight because of this. And so again, it just really showed me that you need to double check everything. When you're applying, when you're picking up the cards, just be super diligent because they will make mistakes and it's not something that you want to happen. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. First, let's talk about crypto. One, negative thing about using Georgian bank accounts is that they won't connect to foreign crypto exchanges. So that's quite a negative thing if you're into trading crypto. Now, what I have learned, this is something that I had to figure out on my own. I haven't seen anyone else talking about this, but what I've learned is that you can actually make a wire transfer, a SWIFT transfer, to a company called Etana Custody. Now, Etana custody is very tightly linked with the crypto exchange Kraken, which I believe is a very reputable crypto exchange. And so if you have a Kraken account, you can also open up an Etana custody account. It's a separate process. You have to go through KYC and all that with them. But once you have an Etana custody account, you can send money from your Georgian bank account to there. You can't send it to Kraken. It'll get denied by your Georgian bank, but you can send it to Etana custody. And from there, you can send it very quickly and easily to Kraken. If you're depositing money into Kraken from your Etana custody account, there are no fees. So it's very smooth like that. It's just a matter of adding that additional step. And so if you are trading crypto, then this is the one way, the one good way that I found to do it. And I haven't seen anyone else talking about this, so hopefully that's helpful. You can also use a Georgian crypto exchange called Cryptal. It's fine, but the problem with Cryptal is that they have very, very, very low liquidity, and so they have massive spreads. The good thing is that you can connect, you can integrate your account very, very easily and basically free. I think you might have to pay something like 1 Lari for a transfer in or out, but it's extremely affordable. No percentage-based fees or anything like that. But once you actually trade, once you buy whatever crypto you want to buy, then the spreads are enormous. So ideally, you want to avoid that. And if you can use the first method of going to Etana custody into Kraken, that's much more cost-effective. If you're just trading small amounts, then maybe you can use Crypto, but I can't really recommend it. So some general notes here. If you're making large transfers, I asked TBC and Solo about this. TBC told me that $10,000 may trigger questions. So if you're depositing 10 grand, it may trigger questions. And if you deposit 100,000, it definitely will. So somewhere in that, in between there is kind of where their threshold is between, or in order to ask you questions, right? And so they'll generally ask you for proof of income if you're making larger transfers and maybe some additional stuff too. It can be, the back and forth on that can be kind of frustrating and can take a bit of time. So I had to ping my account manager quite a few times just to make sure that, that everything was moving smoothly. For Solo, they say that large transfers are fine. They didn't define what large transfers are. They wouldn't really give me any clarity on that, and I haven't tested it with them, but that's just an idea of what might happen. So with TBC, I think you're fine if you're depositing something like low 5 figures. You might not get questioned on that, and if you do, then they'll be looking for something like a proof of income. For Solo, I don't have specific numbers on that. In terms of foreign currency transfer fees, TBC and Solo both charge 0.2% with a minimum of $15, maximum $150. So this can add up quite a lot if you are transferring money in foreign currencies. So obviously in this case, the Lari is the local currency, but you will have accounts in dollars, euros, and pounds. So that's quite nice actually to have a multi-currency account like that. But even if you're moving money between the two banks, let's say in dollars, then you're going to pay this $15 fee. And as for the phone number, definitely use your regular number, not your local phone number. So, this is where I ran into a problem with Solo. Somehow they had my Georgian phone number as my primary phone number, right? They asked for multiple phone numbers because they needed a Georgian one, but they also allowed me to add my regular phone number, which is a foreign phone number. But the problem was they had the Georgian phone number as the primary number. And what that meant was that apparently when I left Georgia, I don't know if this is normal or what, but I wasn't able to receive text messages. And the Bank of Georgia required having two-factor authentication. And so when I left the country, I couldn't access the account anymore because I couldn't receive the text messages to open the account, to log in. And they told me when I reached out to them, I said, hey, can I change the phone number here? They said, well, in order to do that, you need to log into the app. And I said, guys, I can't log in. We need to change the phone number. And we had this whole, it became a big problem where I just could not get into the app and I couldn't use the bank account at all. Finally, I pushed them on this very hard because their only solution, they just said, you just have to come back to Georgia. And I said, like, that's ridiculous, right? All we're doing is changing my secondary phone number to be my primary phone number. And they said, sorry, we can't help. Anyway, I pushed them on this, and finally they relented and said, okay, we can do a kind of an official video call. And we had to, we sat down on a video call, one of their team members. I had to show my passport on the call. They had to record it. It was very formal. They had to ask me some, very specific scripted questions. And then finally they were able to change it. So this became, a big problem that took many hours of my time just to change the phone number. So definitely make sure that your regular phone number that you use day to day is the primary one on the account. Don't make this mistake that apparently I made. And this is why I say you want to double check absolutely everything, because when that application gets filed, make sure that you have the correct address, make sure that you have the correct phone number in the right place, because for whatever reason, changing very small, innocent stuff like this can just be a huge headache in the Georgian banking system. So this is part of the reason why I give these customer service scores, and these are subjective to me, right? But at TBC, I'm giving them a 6 out of 10, and at Solo, I'm giving them a 5 out of 10. To be frank, I have had some great customer service experiences with both banks, but just some of this stuff, spending 6 or 8 or 10 hours trying to change the phone number on my account when I'm speaking to them on the phone, right? It's just completely ridiculous. So thinking, trying to zoom out and think about the pros and cons of the customer service here, they do speak good English, and I was very impressed with that. And you can make callback requests with both banks. So, calling their customer service line can be quite expensive if you're calling from abroad. But what you can also do is just send a message to the customer service chat on their website or send an email to the general customer service email address and say, hey, can you have someone call me? And then they'll call back in an hour or 2 or 3 hours, right? They're pretty quick and pretty good about that. But the cons of customer service is that there is a lack of knowledge in a lot of areas and inconsistent knowledge, right? So when I was in a branch, I would always ask multiple people the same questions and often get different answers, sometimes slightly different answers, but sometimes completely different answers, which is pretty concerning when you're dealing, with a bank and trying to get reliable information. But mostly it just comes down to the antiquated rules. Like I said, with changing phone numbers, there's just some rules and processes that make absolutely no sense and are somehow stuck, 50 years ago. And this can be pretty frustrating. So if you're reading things online that say, oh, the Georgian banking system is fantastic and all this kind of stuff, there are definitely great things about it. But at the same time, you will probably run into some of these frustrating situations. So hopefully you can learn from my experience and be diligent about double checking things and stuff like that. But you might find yourself in this spot. And it's just important to know that before you open the account. So what would I do differently? Well, looking back, I would open one account, not several, and I would go with the Solo X account. Like I said, I opened several accounts because I just wanted to have options, and I knew that, I can cancel the accounts later. So it just made sense to do that from the beginning. But now with the knowledge I have now, if I were to do it again, I would just open the Solo X account. That's enough for me now. The second thing, again, I would make sure that they use my proper phone number, right? I can't say this enough because it caused such a headache for me that I would be super, super diligent about that. And then the last thing is that I would spend at least 3 full business days on the ground in Tbilisi. The reason I say this is that when I arrived, I got there late on a Sunday night. And I left Wednesday afternoon around 5 p.m. or something. So less than 72 hours. And the thing is, I applied for the accounts Monday morning. I picked up the cards the next day at 3 p.m. like they said I could. But because I had the problem with the cards, I could only pick up the cards the next day at 3 p.m. again. And actually, they were late with the card, so it became like a real rush to get to my flight. And I barely made the flight on time. So I don't recommend doing that. It was too stressful. And it seems like making mistakes with cards like this is probably not completely unusual for them. So I would say give yourself at least 3 full business days, ideally 4, so that the entire process can be smooth. You can spend some time in the city and just enjoy yourself. Don't rush through it like I have. But that's pretty much it. Hopefully this has been helpful for you. If you want to learn, more about the things that I'm doing, then you can watch some more videos on my channel. And specifically, I'm an international investor. So if you want to learn specifically about how I'm investing, and this is especially relevant if you're an internationally minded person or if you're based in Europe, right? Then I have quite a bit of knowledge around these areas. So if you want to learn about the way that I'm investing my own personal capital these days, then go ahead and watch this video next.